Like when you don't get any truth, you don't get closure. We should have moved on a long time ago. It's a memory imprint in my head, like I can't go to sleep at night time without a radio or a television on, and I have to have a light on, because that's in my head for the last 40 years.
None of what you see around me should exist. The reason it does is because 40 years ago this week, 48 people lost their lives when the Stardust nightclub was engulfed in flames. We're going to go to the site of that tragedy, and we're going to speak to survivors and their family members about why they're still looking for answers.
My name is Samantha Keegan. I'm a survivor of the Stardust disaster, 14th of February 1981, and also lost my two sisters, Mary and Martina Keegan. It was Friday the 13th, and I always remember my father saying, please don't go. It's like Friday the 13th. But we had a plan that we were going to go and we were going to have a great night. Meeting friends from school and friends like that we knew that was all that coming here. The disco competition started and all the couples got up on the floor and they were dancing together. The judges had picked the winners of the competition. And then, when they were announced then, like they went up and got their prize. Then the dancing started again. And everybody got up on the floor and they were dancing away. Having a great night. Everything up to that was brilliant. Then I looked up and I seen the smoke floating across the ceiling, and I thought it was the DJ had to letting off special effects. Then my friend said, look over there, and I looked over. There was a little small fire in the west alcove, and like people were just looking at it, and it was only about 18 inches high. A little small fire, and then it turned into a massive big inferno. Like it was just like something that you'd never actually imagine ever happening. So we made our way over to the North Alcove where our coats and bags was. Then the DJ made another announcement, right, for everyone to make their way to the nearest exit. And we tried to make our way to the exit. We were 6 foot away from the door and we were pushed to the ground. The smoke was coming down, thick black smoke, and the flames were flashing across the ceiling on top of us. And then the ceiling started falling on top of us. But you couldn't breathe because the smoke was that thick. It was actually going into your throat and it was stopping you from breathing. The flames was just right on top of you. It was like being in hell. I just remember my last words, oh God, please help us. And then we were knocked out. The next thing I remember then was being outside, right, in a different atmosphere. And I kept screaming for Mary and Martina.
My name is Suzanne Keegan, and I lost my two sisters, Mary and Martina Keegan, in the Stardust 40 years ago. Mary was so intelligent, she got a scholarship and all. And Martina, like, we were all like chalk and cheese, like, because we were all so close-knit family. And then the Stardust came, and it was like a bomb. Everybody separated.
Our family was a very close-knit family. The Stardust happened and it tore the family apart, and still to this day is tearing us apart because we have no closure, we have no justice, and we shouldn't be left in limbo. The state has a lot to answer for, along with the owner of the Stardust. We were the working class, and as I said, if we'd have been from the other side of the city, things would not have gone this far. We would be fighting against, half the time you're fighting against a brick wall because they just don't want to listen. They know they got it wrong. Why don't they just stand up and say, look, we're sorry.
We've been trapped in Stardust for 40 years. Stigmatised as arsonists, stigmatised as Stardust families. Just never goes away. It's there all the time. Constantly, morning, noon and night.
Every day it's the same as if it was 1981 as regards Caroline being missing. And we miss her very badly, I must say. My name is McCoo. I'm with my wife Phyllis here. Our only daughter Caroline, 17 and a half years of age, was in the Stardust that night in 1981, and she died in the Stardust. Well, the whole tribunal was an absolute farce. Now, we didn't realise this at the time, but we were taught that they're there to help us, but the government were fighting against us. They didn't want us to have a proper inquest or a proper inquiry. At the time, the tribunal said that it was probably arson that caused the fire. So that meant that all of us were branded, all the kids at that time were branded, and as arsonists. We thought that the government was on our side, but for whatever reason, they kept knocking us back. She had about 10 or 12 cousins, right, around the same age, all growing up at that time. And they're all married and have children, and they're grandparents now. We miss out on all that, really.
My name is Samantha Mangan, and my mum, Helena Mangan, was killed in the Stardust. My mum was only 22 years old and I was 4 when it all happened. I'd seen her that night getting ready. She was looking forward to going out. I got up the next morning because my mum was a single mum at the time. She still lived at home. We had bunk beds. In the morning time, I'd climb up to wake her up, especially when I knew she'd been out the night before with a bit of a hangover. But that morning I got up onto her bed and she wasn't there. I remember then going down the stairs to this atmosphere of everybody upset and crying, looking for her but couldn't find her. I just remember saying, no, she'd be home, she'd be waiting. The way I've dealt with it over the last 40 years was that my mum got out of the Stardust, but she's lost her memory and she just went walking. I used to walk around the streets and town looking for her, like I'd be in crowds and trying to see if I could pick her face out in the crowd, but no, I still couldn't find her anywhere, you know. It really hit home to me 2 years ago when I decided I was going to read her coroner's report. To read about your mum and the condition that she was in, it's really devastated me. Like before then I wasn't really quite involved with the Stardust, but after I read that I felt I had to give my mum a voice. I had to be there. I had to fight for her. I needed justice. I needed answers. I needed to know where she was, how close was she at the door that was locked, was she locked in the toilets. I just need answers and I need to know where and why hasn't anybody ever been made accountable for her death and for everybody else's. Like, it just baffles me that the owners got away with everything, that they were never made accountable for anything to do with any 48 people's deaths. Like, it's just been hard.
When you don't get truth, you don't get closure. I know I'll never forget my sisters, Mary and Martina, and none of the families will ever forget their loved ones that died so tragically. But the truth has to be told. The world needs to know the truth of what happened on that fateful night.
Well, the truth should have been out in the first time, but the first time cover-up saying that it was arson, and then they fought for justice for that. And now we want justice, like how they died and why they did die, and why was the doors locked with chains on them. They still never answered them questions. The family is still fighting on and we're still going to get me ma justice. And just after she passed and she got buried, then they came out saying that they were going to have an inquest. So she must have been looking down and it's going to happen.
I have great hope and I have great faith because for the first time now in 40 years, right, we have a team on board, right, that are all independently, right, they're not involved in the Irish state at all, and they're an absolutely great experts, right, and a great team of lawyers that we have. So I have great faith that this inquest is going to be telling the truth of what happened to our loved ones 40 years ago.
Well, let's put it this way, we're hopeful, we're not optimistic, because we've had so many knockbacks in the past. What to say, at the end of the day, seeing is believing.
I'm hoping I'll get the answers. Yeah, I have good faith in our solicitor. I think he's doing an amazing job. Yeah, so I'm hoping this time we'll get justice and we'll get the answers that we all need to move on.
They've had reports, they've had inquiries, investigations, tribunals. But 4 decades on, the survivors of the Stardust fire and the family members of those who've lost their lives are still looking for 2 things above all else. They're looking for answers and they're looking for justice. And they hope by the time of the next anniversary, they'll at least be closer to both.